Hello, how are you doing? Welcome back to Confident Business English. I'm Anna. I'm a neurolanguage coach, and this is the podcast if you're a senior manager and you want to build your confidence communicating in English. One of the biggest areas I see that my clients have problems with, and perhaps you can relate to this as well, is feeling conscious about their pronunciation. That's why today, as a special bonus episode, I'm bringing on Emma from Pronunciation with Emma. Emma is a pronunciation expert. She's got years and years of experience, and she has, I think, over 1 million followers across all social media. And in short, she knows what she's talking about, and she is one of the references in the space on pronunciation. I wanted to get as many tips in as possible for you, so that's why this episode is a little bit longer. If you're a little bit short on time, try chunking it up during the commute this week or spreading it across a few days. This is what we go into in the episode. First, you're going to hear an introduction from Emma. She's going to then give you her advice if you feel that pronunciation is a big issue. She's going to give you some really practical tips about how to master that one difficult word that we all have, that we hate to say, that makes us hesitate in the middle of meetings. Then she's going to go into top tips for speakers of specific first languages. And we're going to finish up with a Q&A on some of your biggest pronunciation challenges that you sent in to me. I really hope that you take away a lot from this episode. As a heads up, remember this is the penultimate episode of this season, and I'll be back next week on the 16th of July 2025 for the final edition. Let's crack on then, shall we?
So my name is Emma. I run Pronunciation with Emma. I have a YouTube channel which is growing crazily. It's really exciting. I'm also on Instagram. I do occasional short videos there. And I have a podcast as well, the Pronunciation with Emma podcast, which I actually started during the pandemic because I was Twitch streaming. So if no one's familiar with Twitch, it's basically a platform where you watch live videos. Think of YouTube, but all the videos are live. And I was teaching English with video games during the lockdown in the COVID days. And I would tell lots of different stories, and people were like, "Oh, you need a podcast. You have so many stories." So I started a podcast, started telling stories, and yeah, I've recently relaunched it.
So I wonder, Emma, let's kick off. And I think it would be useful to start with a really broad question, and then we can go into some more specific questions later. One of the things that I find a lot with people that I work with, and these are people that work in companies, maybe they work in an American company, but they're based in Spain, or maybe it's a French company in Germany. They have to communicate with a lot of people from around the world. And one of the things I see all the time is about pronunciation. Mm-hmm. People are embarrassed. They're really ashamed. They feel so conscious. And I wonder if maybe we could start there. Imagine that there's someone listening to this that they feel really bad about their pronunciation, really conscious of it. They feel like when they speak, people are judging them. They've got to a point where they just don't really want to speak anymore, or they're so conscious of it, they don't speak up. And then they're not part of that conversation at work, and they're not really doing themselves justice. What advice or recommendations would you give to somebody who's in that situation with their pronunciation?
Firstly, I've been in that situation myself with Spanish. If anyone doesn't know, I live in Spain and I speak Spanish as well as I can. And about 10 years ago, I was in a McDonald's and I was ordering. It was my first ever time in Spain, my first ever time abroad, and I spoke such basic Spanish. But I thought, I'm going to be brave. I'm going to order in McDonald's in Spanish. And I ordered in Spanish, just very basic, like burger and chips, Coca-Cola Cero, like this sort of thing. And there was like a young couple next to me, a guy and a girl, laughing. And I felt awful. I felt so embarrassed. I felt sick. Like in my stomach, I just felt like, oh, like horrible. When I got my food, I didn't even really want to eat it. because I was just so upset that they'd laughed at me. Now, the sad thing is that those two people probably carried on the rest of their day, not even thinking twice about the fact that they just laughed at an English girl for trying to speak their language. And that's something that you also need to keep in mind, that the world will keep spinning regardless of whether you speak English or not, you know? And that's something that I had to come to terms with, but it took me 3 months to be able to speak Spanish again.
Wow.
And the thing that really helped me get that confidence back was I started lessons with a teacher. So it gave me a safe space where I knew that the teacher wouldn't laugh at me. And if they did laugh, it was never a nasty intention behind it. It was like a kind of laughing with you, not laughing at you. They really taught me how to laugh at myself and to laugh at my mistakes. And I know it's so hard to say that to someone who is really feeling insecure, to laugh at yourself. But the moment you start laughing at yourself, the moment you take away the power of someone laughing at you, you don't feel that embarrassment. It's more just like, ha ha ha, oops, I accidentally said that word. Moving on. Next thing. So yeah, find a safe space to practice with a teacher. That's the biggest piece of advice. The second thing, sometimes people put other people down because it requires more effort to work on themselves. And so they'll laugh at you to get a bit of a kick just to make themselves feel good. It's like cheap dopamine, if that makes sense for them. But it's got nothing to do with you. It's because they're either not happy with themselves, or you are highlighting an insecurity that they have in some way.
I'm thinking of a client I had who they would be in a meeting and one of the people there would correct them in the middle of the meeting in front of other people for their pronunciation and how they said those words. Those types of judgy colleagues, we can all think of them. I'm sure, guys listening, you can think of that person who maybe when you speak, you feel like they've got a magnifying glass over your mistakes, or they're kind of thinking, their accent isn't very good, or they don't sound very good in English. Maybe they're just projecting something else about themselves. Now, I wonder if I could ask you about, everybody has one word that they hate. For me, when I started learning Spanish, it was organización. That took me like 2 years to say it without hesitating before or stopping in the middle of the word. I don't know what it was. It's not even that difficult a word, I don't think, but I would always trip over it. I work with a lot of people that they have this one business word or something to do with their industry or sector, and they always get stuck on it. And their strategy is to avoid it as best they can. But at some point, there's no avoiding it because it's a key word. You have to use it. So in your experience, Emma, what is the most effective way for people to correct more specific pronunciation mistakes?
If they are already aware of the word, then the easiest thing to do is to break it down into syllables. Now, this is where a lot of people get quite hung up on syllables, because then they're like, how do I divide the word into syllables? Don't worry so much about that. It's not important. What we're doing here is dividing the word into little pieces. Think of it as like a jigsaw puzzle. You're separating the word, and then you're going to practice saying that word in those little chunks. So if it's a word, let's go with the word pronunciation. Break it down into syllables. Pronunciation. Okay, we've got 5 syllables. Great. What you're going to do is work out which part is causing you the problem. Is it the first part? Is it the ra? Are you saying like pra when it should be pra? Practice it with whatever syllables are causing the issue. And then one thing I like to do is work backwards or work around that syllable. So let's say, for example, that the part that's tripping you up is the final syllable, shun. Yeah. So you practice shun. So it's not sion or tion or whatever, but shun. with a schwa. You practice that. Perfect. Now work backwards. So pronunciation. So we're going to go shun, Asian, Asian. I'm trying to think how to say pronunciation. Ciation, ciation. By the time you add all the syllables together, you get the full word. By working backwards or by working around the syllable that's causing you the problem, maybe you're having problems with the none part. So you start with none, pronun, pronunci, and you add the syllables around it. By doing that, it helps you separate the word and the meaning of the word, and it starts to transfer it more into sound. Especially with English not being a phonetic language, by separating the spelling and the meaning of the word to just sound, it helps to make it a lot easier.
Let me move on then and ask you about different speakers from all around the world. There's many people that listen to the podcast that are Polish, Brazilian, for example, Japanese. And I wonder if we could focus on a few of these speakers of these languages and what are some of the top tips you would give people in these groups? Why don't we start with Spanish then, and then we'll go from there. So what would be your top tip for native Spanish speakers in terms of pronunciation?
I would say to really watch that you're not adding a syllable to the start of words. And by that, I mean, make sure you're not adding an extra vowel to the start of words. Because Spanish doesn't really begin with a s sound, as in snake, okay? Or stop, and so on. What tends to happen when Spanish speakers speak in English, they say words like stop, ski, start as stop, start, ski, and so on. And they add this extra vowel to the start. It's not going to be the end of the world if you do add the extra syllable, but for clarity, try not to add extra syllables, because if you're speaking to someone, whether they're native or non-native, adding that extra syllable may cause a bit of confusion. So to help fix that, elongate the S. So instead of saying stop, start with stop, start, and so on.
Okay, what about French speakers?
Again, it's not something that's going to stop the world from spinning anytime soon, but I would be really careful of the trilled R at the back. So the French R, I can't do it very well, so apologies, French speakers. You have permission to bully me for this. But your R sound is at the back of your throat. It's what's called a uvular trill, fancy term, okay? But it's pronounced at the back with the back of your tongue raised. So a word like red in English is said like red. It's at the back. So make sure you're not saying like red, round, really, and so on. Make sure you're using more your mouth, but of course, your lips, I meant to say. Make sure you're using your lips. So I always say to do the English R sound, your lips need to be in a kind of like a kissing face, like a duck mouth. Your lips are kind of like this, like with a kind of duck shape. Yeah. And your tongue, I want you to imagine that you've been eating some peanut butter or you've been eating something really sticky. Okay. And on the top inside parts of your teeth here, you're going to use the size of your tongue to bring it up as though you're trying to remove the peanut butter. Okay. So the peanut butter's stuck and your tongue is coming up to clean the top inside teeth. Okay. And that's the position your tongue needs to be in. So it's almost like a kind of U shape that your tongue is in, let's say, but a U shape from the front. Yeah. So you got the tongue position where the sides of the tongue are touching the top inside teeth. And then you've got the duck mouth, put them together, red. And that's it. So you've got to kind of combine them a little bit. So you got red, round, really, not red, round, and really. I really need to work on my French trill, but hopefully they'll have understand what I'm talking about.
Let's hop over to Asia then. What
Mhm.
about Japanese speakers?
Japanese speakers are an interesting one because Japanese is one of the fastest spoken languages in terms of syllables per second. I think it's something crazy like 8 syllables a second or something. Now, the way Japanese works, it doesn't work in syllables, it works in mora. But for simplicity, we can think of it as syllables, okay? Because I'm not going to sit and explain mora and
Okay.
turn it into a syllable lesson. But there are more syllables per second. I think it's something like 8 syllables. It's crazy high compared to English, which is way, way lower. Because of that, what some Japanese speakers do when they're speaking in English is to sound more native or to sound more fluent, they speak faster and they try to speak the speed of Japanese. Because, of course, if you speak Japanese quickly, the more natural you sound. However, in English, if you speak English the speed of Japanese, people are seriously going to have troubles understanding you because the speed of the language is twice as fast as English. So, my top tip is just to slow down. Slow down and really focus on sentence stress. Because again, Japanese is almost like a kind of machine gun. It's like da, 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 the way it's spoken. While English is like ba 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 ba. And that
Mm.
wa, the higher parts, are the stressed important words. So focus on stress, sentence stress, and watch your speed. You got 2 for 1 there. You got 2 tips in
Yeah,
one.
2 for 1. If I could ask you a couple, let's do two more. What would you say for people who speak Polish?
There are a few things. I think the obvious one would be the what and the. I have definitely realized that Polish speakers have a hard time with the English wa sound. I think a lot of languages do. Like a lot of speakers have problems with what and the, so they're not alone. They need to make sure that they're touching, that they're not touching actually. So when they do the va sound, as in like vet, like the doctor that you take your animal to, like your dog, you take it to the vet. Your top teeth are touching your bottom lip. But with the wa sound, I think of this as more of a vowel. It's not, but think of it as a vowel. So you start with your mouth really round, like you're saying ooh, like who is he? Yeah, that ooh sound. And then you open it up. So there's no contact at all with the teeth and the lip when you do the wha, wha. You're just moving from a very small, rounded shape with your mouth, with the vowel
Mm-hmm.
ooh, open it up, and then you get the wha. So you've got minimal pairs like wet and vet, when, maybe not when, because Ven doesn't exist. Went and vent, west and vest, and so on.
Okay, I'm
Ooh.
going to do one more.
Mhm.
What about Farsy speakers? What top tip would you have for them?
I would say to watch out. This isn't just for Farsi speakers. I think
Okay.
this could be applied to almost everyone.
Okay.
But I would say to watch out for the th and the sounds. So again, it's not the end of the world if you say this instead of this, or sink instead of think, if there is context given. So if I say, for example, oh, I think that, then you know I'm trying to say, I think that. It's obvious from the context. But if you're just saying sink, there's no context. I think you're talking about a sink in the bathroom that you use to wash your hands instead of think. Watch out for the TH sounds. There are 2 ways to do them. You can do it with the tongue touching the top teeth behind the top teeth, or you can do it with the tongue between the teeth. I normally teach the second way first, just because it's a bit easier. But make sure your tongue is between your teeth. and that you're not biting. So you're not saying like this, but this. You need to be able to hold the sound. So the air is coming from between your teeth, your tongue, getting everything confused now, between your tongue and your top teeth. Yeah. Think of how you do a th sound, like in Farsy, far. Your top teeth are touching your lip and the air is coming through. The th sounds work in the same way, but instead of your bottom lip being used, you're using your tongue. So if you can do the th sound, you're already halfway there. You just need to replace your bottom lip with your tongue.
Okay.
So you've got th as in think, this is voiceless, and then th as in this, that, mother, and so on. And that's with vibration in your throat.
Okay, Emma, we're going to wrap up with a bit of a quick fire round. And these are some questions that some of the listeners have sent in.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to start with Willie from Peru, who is
Hi,
a Spanish
Willie.
speaker. They are a manager for a mining company. And Willie's question is, I was always curious why the pronunciation of I changes for some verb tenses like drive and driven. This is a wonderful question, Willie, and definitely one that I've heard before as well. So, Emma, what would you say for that question?
Well, I'm not going to be annoying and say, it is how it is, Willie, deal with it. We were joking before we hit record about this. There is a rule. You will hopefully be relieved to hear that. So this rule basically falls under the magic E. I don't know if do you remember being taught about the magic E in primary school, Anna? Do you
I
remember?
don't actually. Goodness, maybe I went to a terrible primary school, but I don't remember the magic E. It
Obviously.
hasn't embedded in my learning process. No,
Oh, it was
unfortunately.
just so boring how they taught it. You were like, I'm just gonna forget that. So this is actually something that English children, apart from Anna, are taught where they are in primary school. So the magic E is essentially when you have a one syllable word where it follows the pattern of consonant, vowel, consonant in the context of what was it?
Drive driven.
Yeah, it was drive and driven. Okay. When I'm trying to think of an example, like tap. Okay. So you got T-A-P, tap. Consonant, vowel, consonant. When it's one syllable, consonant, vowel, consonant, you pronounce it with a short vowel sound. Ah. And this goes for a, e, I, o, o. Or if you're from the south of England, okay? Like cup, kit, and so on. If you add the E to the end, like with drive, the reason why it's got the long I mean, I'm talking about a slightly separate rule here, but it's just a useful rule to know. If you take the word drive, because it has the E on the end, the vowel in the middle changes. And it changes to the pronunciation of how it is in the alphabet. So think about the vowels in English: A, E, I, O, U. So we have, for example, what was it? Tap. You add an E. What does it become, Anna?
Tape.
Well done. You take a word. Let's go. You take a word like cap. We add an E to the end. What does it become, Anna?
Cape.
Fantastic
That's right,
job.
right? I was just wondering there. I was like, oh, yes, cape.
Yeah.
Double checking there.
Let me just doubt all of my native language. So that explains drive. Yeah. When it comes to driven, it seems that whenever we add that prefix in, like driven, try to think of some other words. I mean, it doesn't always work because you have words like eat and eaten. Like eat would take the same vowel sound. It doesn't quite follow the same rule as the magic E. But yeah, it does seem that when we add this suffix, then the vowel is then shortened again. And I think my theory is that it's because it doesn't end with the E anymore.
Ah,
You know what I mean?
yeah. So it ends in like a
And
driven rather than drive.
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. Then you're kind of back between consonant sounds again.
Right.
Now, people will be thinking, but hold on, Emma, E is a vowel. Yes. It is written, it is a written vowel, but it's not pronounced. Yeah. Like
Okay.
I don't say drive-y, for
Yeah.
example, or drive. Like I'm not pronouncing the E. It's drive. It ends in a consonant. Even though there's a vowel written, it's silent. So when it comes to driven, we're still not, we still don't say it.
So Emma, here we've got one from Maribel. She is from Spain. She's Spanish and she's an executive assistant. And this is her pronunciation challenge. Wood, wolf. That W sound drives me nuts. Smiley face.
I love the smiley face. It's so like
Yes, right.
passive aggressive, isn't it? I love that, Maribel.
Yes.
Okay, Maribel. The thing is with the wa in Spanish, you don't quite have the same wa as we do in English. But a good way to get around it is by thinking of words that start with an H and a U. So if you think of like the city Huelva, think of the pronunciation of the very start there. You say like w, and that's very similar, not the same, but it's very, very similar to the English wood and wolf. The only difference is that you got to mind the position afterwards. So in words like woo, woo, all you're doing is in words like wood, I should finish the whole word off there. You're just opening your mouth a little bit. So start with Huelva. I said that terribly. Huelva, like the city, or even the word huevo, which means like egg. I said that in a very English way then, but never mind. Get your mouth in that really small position and then open it just very slightly for the vowel after it. So in the case of like Huelva, you're opening to an E. In the case of W, you're just opening it to the O sound. So you have W, W, and then add the rest of the word would. The key thing is that you're not raising the back of your tongue to say it like a G. This is a problem that a lot of my Spanish students have. So they'll say things like good, good you mind, for example. Mind that the back of your tongue is not coming up. Your tongue should be quite relaxed. So would. The same with wool. The only time your tongue should be moving in the word wood and wolf is to pronounce the duh in wood and the olf in wolf. But for the beginning part, for the what, doesn't do anything. It's all in the lips. I forgot the word. It's all in the lips.
Okay, let's finish up with the last one. Let's go with Patricia, who works in hospitality. Hello, Patricia.
Hello.
Your pronunciation challenge was all the words, all. Stress on all, I think. All the
All the
words that
words of
end in
English.
ly. Yes, at the end. For
Yeah.
example, absolutely, certainly. I can't think of any
Mhm.
more actually, but there's many. But what?
There are literally thousands,
Yeah,
but
right.
of
I was
course,
just thinking, I
when
can't think of any right now, but there are a lot.
I know it's like when a student, when I'm in a lesson with a student, and they're like, "Can you think of an example?" I'm like, "No, I literally cannot. I have gone blank. I cannot think of a single word right now." Happens to the best of us. So all the words that end in "ly." My guess is that the problem is not necessarily with the ending "ly," because "ly" is easy enough to say. Yeah, you have the "la" that you have in Spanish, and you have the "e," which you pretty much have in Spanish as well. "Ly." The part that's probably causing the difficulty is the sound that's before it. So, like you gave the word absolutely. Now, listen to how I'm saying that. Absolutely. It's hard, right? And I'm a native speaker. I'm really trying to pronounce that T. But what you'll find a lot of speakers do, not just natives, but fluent speakers, is they will glottalize that T. So, what I mean by glottalize is think of the phrase, uh-oh, like someone does something wrong, and you go, uh-oh. That little break, uh-oh, That break there is the glottal stop. Yeah, it's where your vocal cords, they kind of just close for a second. So instead of saying absolutely, so it's really hard to say absolutely, absolutely. And if you say it quick enough, people don't even notice the T is gone. And it's way easier to say, even in a formal setting. I think many people, just because that consonant cluster is so hard, they would glottalize the T. When it comes to a N, so you've got like certainly, that's a little bit easier, but you hold the N at the top, certain, then release it as a L. Certainly. Certainly. So no glottalization. That's only with the T. But with the N, you just release it as a L.
Thank you so much, Emma. Well, we will wrap up. Thank you so much, Emma, for your time. It really was wonderful. And do you want to remind people where they can find you as well?
Of course, yes. So if you just search anywhere for pronunciation with Emma, you should be able to find me. So yeah, pronunciation with Emma.
There you go then. I really hope you enjoyed that conversation. If you're still here at the end, newsletter will be out this week as per usual with a roundup of some of the tips that Emma talked about. And join me next week on the 16th of July 2025 for the last episode of Confident Business English. This season, sorry, that sounded like it was forever. Just this season, and then we'll be back again on September the 17th. See you soon.